Subscribe to Dr. Nightmare Channel now.
Story 1. The Townhouse Stalker. Summer evenings in suburban neighborhoods always seemed to carry a deceptive kind of peace. The sort of false calm that made people believe they were safe simply because the streets were lined with identical houses, neatly trimmed hedges, and rows of parked cars that glittered under the fading light. But for Amanda, that illusion of safety shattered the moment she moved into her new townhouse, because from the very first night she sensed that something wasn't right, that someone was watching her. And no matter how much she tried to ignore it, the feeling grew heavier with every passing day, until it was impossible to deny. She had rented the townhouse because it was affordable and close enough to her job in the city, tucked inside a quiet block of near-identical units, each with small porches and thin backyards separated by flimsy wooden fences. On the surface, it seemed perfect, safe, suburban, uneventful. But for Amanda, that illusion of safety shattered the moment she moved into her new townhouse, because from the very first night she sensed that something wasn't right, that someone was watching her. And no matter how much she tried to ignore it, the feeling grew heavier with every passing day, until it was impossible to deny. She had rented the townhouse because it was affordable and close enough to her job in the city, tucked inside a quiet block of near-identical units, each with small porches and thin backyards separated by flimsy wooden fences. On the surface, it seemed perfect, safe, suburban, uneventful. But for Amanda, that illusion of safety shattered the moment she moved into her new townhouse, because from the very first night she sensed that something wasn't right, that someone was watching her. And no matter how much she tried to ignore it, the feeling grew heavier with every passing day, until it was impossible to deny. It started subtly. The first evening after she unpacked, while she was sipping tea by the living room window, she noticed a light flicker on across the courtyard. At first, it seemed ordinary, neighbors turning on a lamp. But when she glanced back, she saw the blinds shift just slightly, and behind them, a face lingered far too long, not just glancing, but staring, unblinking, directly at her window. Amanda told herself it was nothing. New neighbors were curious. People noticed when someone new moved in. But over the next week, the face kept appearing, sometimes in different windows, sometimes at odd hours, always watching her townhouse. It was never close enough to see clearly, but she knew it wasn't her imagination. Whoever it was, they weren't just curious, they were studying her. The unease deepened when things inside her townhouse started to feel off. One night, she returned from work to find her front door unlocked. She was certain she had locked it that morning. She always did. Yet the knob turned too easily under her hand. Nothing inside appeared stolen, but her kitchen chairs were out of place, as though someone had dragged them slightly. On her dresser, a single drawer was open, only a fraction of an inch, but Amanda knew she had closed it. The air inside felt wrong, too, heavy, as though someone had just left seconds before she entered. She called the police the first time it happened. 2 officers came, both young, both polite, but both carrying that same dismissive look she'd seen before, the look that said, "A woman living alone is probably just nervous, imagining things." They checked the locks, walked through the house, then shrugged. No signs of forced entry. You should be fine. Probably just forgot. Amanda wanted to believe that, but deep down she knew she hadn't forgotten. The nights became harder. She would lie awake in bed, straining her ears against the silence, certain she heard faint sounds, the creak of the stairs, a soft knock against the wall, the click of the back door shifting in its frame. More than once she thought she heard breathing just outside her bedroom door, steady and low, and when she bolted upright, the sound stopped instantly. Then came the notes. The first one was tucked beneath her welcome mat. Scrawled in messy block letters were the words, "I see you." Amanda froze, her heart hammering as she read the paper over and over. She called the police again, hands trembling. But when they arrived, they dismissed it as a prank. Kids in the neighborhood, they suggested, though Amanda hadn't seen a single child on her street since moving in. They took the note, promised to file a report, and left. Days later, a second note appeared, this time slipped under her front door. "Why don't you close your blinds?" it read. Amanda's stomach turned. She hadn't realized until then how often she left her blinds half open, how visible her movements inside the townhouse must have been. That night she closed every curtain tightly, every blind drawn. But when she woke in the morning, another note waited at the top of her stairs, laid neatly as if placed there while she slept. "I like watching you sleep." Amanda's fear grew into terror. She tried to move through the townhouse quietly, avoiding windows, double-checking every lock, but the sense of being watched only grew. She taped over the peephole in her front door when she noticed shadows lingering on the other side, figures too still to be ordinary neighbors. Her friends begged her to stay with them, but Amanda stubbornly refused. This was her home. She had signed a lease, paid her deposit. Why should she be the one to leave? She wanted the police to do something, but each time she called, their visits grew shorter, their tone more impatient. "No evidence, no crime," they repeated. The breaking point came one stormy night in late August. Rain lashed the windows, wind howled through the eaves, and Amanda sat awake in her bed, unable to sleep, staring at the dim glow of her alarm clock. Sometime after 2, she heard it, the unmistakable sound of her back door opening. She froze. The hinges creaked, then soft footsteps moved across the kitchen floor, slow, deliberate. Amanda's breath caught in her throat. She reached for her phone with trembling hands and dialed 911, whispering frantically that someone was in her house. The operator told her to stay calm, to stay on the line. Officers were on their way. But the footsteps grew louder, moving towards the stairs. Amanda clutched the phone, backing into the far corner of her bedroom, eyes wide with terror as the steps creaked up each stair one by one, deliberate and slow, as if whoever it was wanted her to hear them coming. The line crackled in her ear. "Help is on the way," the operator repeated, but her voice felt miles away. Then silence. The footsteps stopped outside her bedroom door. Amanda held her breath, tears streaming, the phone slippery in her grip. The knob turned, slowly, carefully. A shadow fell across the thin gap beneath the door, long and unmistakable. Then the knob stilled. Amanda's heart pounded so hard she thought she might faint. For what felt like hours, the shadow remained, unmoving. The presence behind the door so palpable, it felt like the air itself had thickened. And then, without a sound, the shadow vanished. When the police arrived, nearly 20 minutes later, the house was empty. No signs of forced entry, no intruder found, just Amanda, pale and shaking, insisting someone had been inside. The officers exchanged glances, sighed, and left her with a heart-hacked warning to stay vigilant. Amanda didn't sleep that night, or the next. Days later, as she was leaving for work, she noticed something new on her porch. Not a note this time. A photograph. It was a picture of her, taken from outside her bedroom window. She was asleep in bed, her face illuminated faintly by moonlight. On the back, scrawled in the same blocky letters, "You looked so peaceful." Amanda never stayed in that townhouse again. She broke her lease, packed what little she could carry,
and left in the middle of the night, too terrified to stay another day. The police never identified a suspect, never followed up on the notes, never investigated the photograph. For them, it was just another call. For Amanda, it was the end of her sense of safety forever. To this day, she still wakes at night certain that someone is watching, her curtains drawn tightly, locks checked 3 times over. Because once you've heard footsteps in your home, once you've seen proof that someone was there while you slept, you can never convince yourself you're truly alone again. And whoever left those notes never said goodbye.
Story 2: The Foreclosure House. Houses are strange things, the way they carry the weight of everyone who's lived in them before. The way the walls seem to hold on to whispers and arguments, laughter and screams, long after the people themselves are gone. Most of the time, we ignore that. We tell ourselves the creaks are just pipes, the drafts just bad insulation, the shadows just tricks of the light. But when the Harris family moved into the old foreclosure on Marlowe Drive, they realized too late that some houses don't forget, some houses don't forgive, and some houses don't want new owners at all. The listing had been too good to be true. A 3-bedroom home with a yard, priced lower than anything else in the area. Robert and Dana Harris had been looking for months, searching for a place big enough to raise their 2 kids, and when they saw the house, faded blue paint, shutters hanging crooked, grass grown high, they saw opportunity. With a little work, it could be theirs, a fresh start. The neighbors kept their distance the day the Harrises moved in. A few watched from porches, offering stiff nods, but no one came over to welcome them. Dana noticed the looks, but she brushed them off. People got weird about foreclosures, she told herself. Maybe they knew the old owners. Maybe it was just awkward. But that first night, she woke to the sound of the phone ringing. It was the landline, the dusty old rotary model the bank had left connected. She hadn't even realized it worked. She stumbled downstairs, half asleep, and picked it up. No one spoke on the other end, just static. Then, faintly, a voice whispered, "Get out." Dana slammed the receiver down, her heart pounding. She told herself it was some prank call, a crossed wire, a leftover connection the bank had never canceled. But the next night, it rang again. This time, Robert answered. "Hello?" The same static, then the same words, low and hollow, like a breath dragged through the wires. "Get out." Robert frowned, muttered about teenagers messing with them, and unplugged the phone. But even without power, the phone rang again the following night. It wasn't just the phone. The house felt wrong, in ways that were hard to explain. Cold spots that lingered no matter how high they turned the thermostat, doors that drifted open after being firmly shut. The kids, 8-year-old Emily and 6-year-old Jacob, complained about whispers keeping them up at night. Emily said a man stood in the corner of her room, staring at her while she tried to sleep. Jacob started crying whenever he passed the basement door, insisting there was someone down there who didn't like him. Robert grew frustrated. He worked long hours, and the last thing he wanted was to deal with ghost stories. He told the kids to stop making things up, told Dana that stress was making her see shadows, told himself that every noise had an explanation. But denial doesn't stop a house like that. One evening, Dana was unpacking boxes when she found an envelope shoved behind a kitchen cabinet. Inside were photographs, grainy, faded black and white. Each showed the same house, their house, but in years earlier. In each successive picture, the family looked worse, hollow-eyed, bruised. In the last photo, only the father remained, his eyes black pits, his mouth a jagged slash of a smile. Dana dropped the envelope, sick to her stomach. She tried to tell Robert, but he waved her off. "Old junk, people used to take weird photos. Stop letting it get to you." But that night, the phone rang again. Robert, angry now, picked it up and shouted, "Who is this? Leave us alone!" The voice on the other end chuckled. Not static this time, not whispers, a laugh. Low, broken, jagged. Then clear as day, "You can't leave. The house is mine." The line went dead. After that, things escalated. The kids grew sickly pale, refusing to sleep in their rooms. Doors slammed without warning, lights flickered until bulbs shattered. Dana swore she heard footsteps in the attic, heavy and deliberate, even though Robert insisted no one was up there. One evening, she heard Jacob crying in the basement. Panicked, she ran down the steps, only to find the room empty. His voice still echoed, though, from the walls. When she told Robert, he finally agreed to call the police. Officers arrived, searched every room, even checked the basement. They found nothing. No intruder, no signs of break-in. They told Robert and Dana it was probably just kids acting out, and left. But the house wasn't finished. On the fifth night, the phone rang again. This time, Emily answered before her parents could stop her. Her small voice trembled as she whispered, "Who is this?" A pause. Then the same jagged voice, filled with glee, "I'm the man in the corner." Emily dropped the phone, screaming. That night, Robert finally broke. He packed bags, shoved clothes into suitcases, shouted that they were leaving right then. He didn't care where they went. But when he yanked open the front door, the porch beyond wasn't the same. It was the same house, the same porch, but rotten, decayed, boards warped and split. The neighborhood gone, replaced by endless fields of black dirt stretching into the horizon. Behind him, the children screamed. Dana grabbed his arm, sobbing, "It won't let us go." The door slammed shut on its own. The Harrises stayed one more night. They didn't sleep. They huddled together in the living room, lights on, waiting for morning. But at 3 a.m., the phone rang. Slowly, as if against their will, all four of them turned to look at it. The receiver lifted on its own. The voice whispered, "You're mine now." The lights blew out. And in the darkness, the sound of heavy footsteps descended the stairs. Neighbors reported the Harrises missing 2 days later. Police investigated, but the house was empty. No sign of the family, no sign of struggle. Just the unplugged phone sitting on the counter, its receiver dangling, swaying back and forth as if someone had just hung it up. And sometimes, when the wind carries just right, people walking past on Marlowe Drive swear they hear it. the shrill ring of a phone that shouldn't work, followed by a voice that whispers, low and delighted, "Get out."
Story 3. The Basement House Haunting. Basements have always carried a certain weight, a heaviness that sinks into the bones of anyone who lingers too long in them. Maybe it's the way sound changes when you're underground, muffled and hollow, or the way the air feels older, stale, like it's been sitting in the dark for years, waiting to be breathed in again. Some basements are just storage, places for boxes and broken furniture. But some are doors that should never have been opened. When Michael and Laura moved into the old 2-story house on the edge of town, they thought they were getting a bargain. The house had sat empty for years, its windows dusty, its shutters sagging. The realtor admitted the place had a history, but refused to give details. Michael and Laura didn't press. They had been saving for years, and the price was too good to walk away from. The first week passed without incident. They painted walls, cleaned carpets, filled the rooms with their furniture. It almost felt like home. But Laura noticed the way the air grew colder whenever she passed the basement door, how her chest tightened every time she set foot on the first step. Michael brushed it off as nerves. Then came the noises. At night, as the house grew quiet, faint thuds echoed from below. At first, they thought it was pipes, the house settling. But the sounds grew clearer. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing across the concrete floor. One night, Michael grabbed a flashlight and went down. The basement was empty. Just old stone walls, cracked concrete, and a single bare bulb swinging slightly as if touched. But the moment he turned to leave, the bulb went out. In the pitch black, he heard breathing. Slow, heavy, right behind him. When the light flickered back on, he was alone. Laura begged him to have the house inspected. Michael agreed, if only to calm her. But the inspector found nothing unusual. No structural issues, no gas leaks, no reason for the noises. Old houses make sounds, he said with a shrug. That night, the basement door opened on its own. Michael and Laura were in bed, the house silent, when the door at the end of the hall creaked wide. They heard the hinges, the soft scrape of wood against the floor. Michael rose, heart pounding, and crept toward it. The stairs yawned into blackness. Then, something moved at the bottom. A shape, tall, unmoving, watching. Michael slammed the door shut, locked it, and shoved a chair under the knob. From then on, the house changed. Lights flickered, no matter how many bulbs they replaced. Cold air seeped from the basement, chilling the entire first floor. Shadows stretched too far across the walls, as if the light bent wrong around them. Laura refused to sleep upstairs anymore. She stayed on the couch, blanket pulled to her chin, staring at the basement door as though daring it to open. It didn't matter. The noises grew louder. Now it wasn't just footsteps. It was scratching, nails raking against the stone, knocks that traveled up the walls, into the pipes, into the floor beneath their bed. Sometimes, in the dead of night, they heard a voice, low, whispering, Impossible to make out, but insistent. Michael called the police once, desperate. Officers arrived, searched the house top to bottom, even the basement. Nothing. "There's no one here," they said. "Maybe you need to get some rest." But that very night, the voice grew louder, clearer. It said Michael's name. The breaking point came in one evening in late October. Michael had stayed late at work. Laura was alone, trying to distract herself with the TV when the basement door began to rattle. Slowly at first, then harder, louder, as if something on the other side was desperate to get out. Laura screamed, grabbed the phone, dialed 911 with shaking hands. The operator answered, but before Laura could speak, the line crackled. Static filled her ear. Then a voice whispered through it, "Don't let him out." The call cut off. The basement door slammed open. When Michael returned home, the living room was empty. The TV still played softly. A half-empty cup of tea sat on the table, but Laura was gone. The basement door stood wide. Michael called her name, his voice breaking, and rushed downstairs. The basement was freezing, his breath visible in the beam of his flashlight. At the far wall, the concrete was cracked, split open, as if something had forced its way through. The air stunk of earth and rot. In the corner lay Laura's blanket, torn, stained. Michael stumbled back, heart pounding, when a voice rose from the darkness. "Now it's just you." The flashlight flickered, died. In the blackness, something moved. Heavy footsteps approached, shaking the floor. Michael screamed, scrambled up the stairs, slammed the door, and pressed his back against it as the pounding below grew louder and louder. The police came again. They searched, asked questions, filed their reports. No sign of Laura, no evidence of a break-in. The official record listed her as missing. But Michael knew. He still lives in that house, though he no longer goes upstairs. He sleeps on the couch now, a shotgun by his side, eyes always on the basement door. And every night, as the clock nears 3 a.m., the noises begin again. The footsteps, the scratching, the voice calling his name. Sometimes, when he's too tired to fight, he swears he hears Laura's voice too, calling from the cracks in the basement wall, begging him to come down. Neighbors say the house still stands empty, its windows dark, its yard overgrown. But at night, if you walk past, you can see it. The faint glow of a light deep underground. And if you stop long enough, you'll hear it too. The sound of something scratching, still trying to get out.